Good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to attend the session today. My name is Scott Small. I am Director of Cyber Threat Intelligence at Tidal Cyber. If you're not familiar with us, we're based in the Washington, D.C. area. We are a software as a service company that builds a platform designed to help organizations operationalize what we call threat-led defense. And unfortunately, wasn't able to be joined by my co-presenter, Harrison Van Riper. He wasn't able to attend the conference at the last minute, but I want to give him a major shout out. He is foundational to all of the work that I'll be talking through in my session today, which is our topic. It's called Procedures Make It Possible. This is procedures referring to the P in the term TTP, Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures. This is a challenge that we believe truly is one of cybersecurity's most persistent. And we've recently released a library and some features to really kind of help teams use and operationalize, define, and track procedures at a large scale. And that's what I'll be talking through here today. I'll give some background on how we developed what we call our procedures library. It's a very deep well of information. I'll talk through some of the ways that organizations can and are starting to use this data right now. And before I get into all that, just to kind of level set with everyone, we'll talk about why procedures have been such a persistent challenge for the industry up until now. So let's actually get started with that piece. Trying to do precision cyber threat intelligence at a large scale, massive challenge that no one has really overcome up until this point. When we talk about what we call threat-informed or threat-led defense, really inherent to this type of approach to security, we're focusing on what I'll refer to kind of synonymously as behaviors, or again, these TTPs. So if we think about the graphic on the screen, this classic pyramid of pain, we see immense benefit when we talk about threat-led defense in focusing on the upper tip of this pyramid, the TTPs, because everything below that is much easier for an adversary to change and rotate through their infrastructure. They can stand up new servers easily, stand up new phishing pages and domains associated with those. It is relatively harder to focus on, to change your TTPs. And so if you're successful in defending against them, it just gives you a lot more sustainability in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. So what we've been really excited to see, it's not synonymous, but it's very kind of built in and closely tied to focusing on behaviors and threat-led defense, is the MITRE ATT&CK knowledge base. This is a knowledge base of commonly referenceable tactics and techniques that defenders have been using since it was released more than 10 years ago. We see so much benefit in being able to refer back to those discrete tactics and techniques, and both from a cyber threat intelligence perspective, as well as your defensive capabilities. Both CTI and defenses can be mapped to MITRE ATT&CK techniques. So that's one of the benefits of using this knowledge base. What has been so exciting is to see as adoption of the knowledge base has grown, we have proof that there is benefit at a maybe more strategic level in analyzing the relevant TTPs that might be present for your organization, as well as how those relate to your defenses. And you can do broad-based security assessments, risk management. When we're focusing at that upper level of this second pyramid in my graphic, the tactics and techniques, there's a lot of value in doing that all at scale. But we will be the first to admit, and many of our customers and users feel this pain as well. It's simply defenders need a more detailed, granular level of data to be able to do their jobs, to actually write detections. You cannot write a detection that can cover at the technique level, but you can down to the procedural level. You cannot write a simulation or a unit test at the higher level, but you can at the lower level. So that's the type and level of information that these types of operational defenders need to simply do their jobs. Why has this been so tough to achieve? Building a procedures library up until now, there's been no commonly accepted definition of what a procedure actually is. There is lack of standardization in something as tactical as tracking what fields should be associated with a procedure. And one of the most notable, especially in recent times, is a huge and growing volume of threat intelligence. So if you are at all familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK knowledge base, you might be kind of raising a question, well, doesn't MITRE ATT&CK already have procedures? I'm going to say the true answer is no. They have in their knowledge base, if you go to the website and look up a group, for example, you're going to see tactics and techniques they're known to utilize. You're going to see what they call procedure examples. And that's what I have a screenshot of on the slide right now. What this really, in essence, is doing is sometimes there's a bit more detail involved here, but at the end of the day, it is saying a certain actor group, APT41, did a certain technique. And that is certainly good to know when you're operating at that higher, more strategic level. But we know in the real world, adversaries are actually doing something a lot more detailed. And so that's the level of detail that is currently missing from this. When we look at kind of just the data modeling behind these procedure examples, it is much more brittle as well. Currently in the MITRE ATT&CK knowledge base, right now, you can only associate a procedure example with one technique at one point in time, but that also is not how adversaries operate. They're typically carrying out procedures for a certain objective and might be really carrying out multiple techniques at one point in time. Final piece of this, when we look at these procedure examples in MITRE ATT&CK, they are largely additive, which means the list only keeps growing. If you look at a group like Lazarus Group or APT 28 or 29, things that have had a ton of cyber threat intelligence reporting over the years, the list of techniques they are known to use only continues to grow. That is also not a completely accurate reflection of the real landscape because really adversaries are evolving. They are using new techniques and procedures. They also stop using other ones. And so that's something that needs to be addressed when we talk about procedure level tracking as well. I have many more screenshot examples coming up here, but this is just one example. Also looking at this same group for my original screenshot, APT41, how they are actually doing in at least one instance, one point in time, this T1570 lateral tool transfer. What are the tools and the software that they're actually using to accomplish that? What are the actual command line commands that they are using, that they are running to accomplish that technique? That is what we mean when we talk about a procedure, at least as it exists now in the Tidal knowledge base. So let me shift into this a little bit more kind of conceptual still in terms of defining what a procedure is. What did we actually do? I mentioned very briefly a moment ago that there are many, there's no commonly accepted definition of what a procedure actually is. I'm not going to read all these. You don't actually need to read them yourself, but I think you get the idea that certainly various sources, trusted sources from across the landscape and the community have defined what they consider to be a procedure previously. But if you do look closely, there's not a ton of close overlap between these definitions. Some of them are really focused in to say that kind of single technique approach to what a procedure is. Some are a little bit more flexible and robust, and those are the ones that we tended to gravitate a little bit more towards ourselves. But again, when we talk about operationalizing that and keeping track of it in a database, some of the data modeling started to break down a little bit more. So that's another piece that we certainly needed to address when we went forward with this. So kind of buried the lead, but we're finally here. What does Tidal Cyber actually consider as a procedure? This is our operating definition. I actually appreciate that it's pretty short and concise. So a procedure is a clearly defined, repeatable set of technical actions that an adversary or simulated one executes to achieve a specific objective. Even though this is a pretty short definition, every single piece of this was extremely intentional. We spent way longer than we'd like to admit in agreeing amongst our team and our customer base on what a procedure actually should be defined as. But what we realized is once we finally did actually kind of take a step back, we were taking a lot of things for granted and figure out what are we calling a procedure. This was then foundational to all of the work that followed in terms of building an actual knowledge base of them. this definition is literally plugged into the workflows that we use to then begin starting to process cyber threat intelligence reporting and turn that all into an actual knowledge base or library of procedures. So in that vein, and this is definitely where I need to give just another immense shout out to my co-presenter, Harrison Van Riper. He is the brains behind all of the artificial intelligence that we leveraged that we knew was going to be essential to building this library and making this feature set really come alive. He is in charge of all of our AI work here. He can speak much more intelligently to this piece than I can. But what I would just say is a little bit more of an overall statement. See so many of our vendors and partners here at the conference talking about AI. The way that we're leveraging it for this work is, I think, a little bit different than what you would traditionally think of. We are really in no ways talking about using AI for kind of like chatbot features and this more conversational approach. It's really kind of setting all of that aside. I just want to highlight that since I think it's what most of us are most familiar with at this point. We are using AI in an extremely targeted fashion, putting a lot of guardrails to make sure it's accurately picking out the information that we're really kind of targeting and looking at procedures from CTI reporting. And then we're also just building in a lot of automation around this as well. But again, the overall takeaway with what I'm trying to say here is just the targeted fashion of the way that we applied AI to this challenge. And again, this was essential to making this work all happen. So this is actually a decently detailed overview of the overall flow of how we generated our procedures library. What we've done all along since we've existed as Tidal is we've leveraged a large volume of public cyber threat intelligence reporting. And certainly there is a ton of value in looking at stuff that might be more private facing, commercial reporting, or things that you might be internally generating yourselves. But even when we look at what's available in the public domain, there is a lot, and there is a lot of good information that is available to be leveraged when trying to build something like a procedure library. We pulled down all of that reporting, and then we did some initial processing with our AI to really be able to pull out what we are defining as procedures from those reports. And you're getting just a very initial sense of the large volume that was coming out of this. So these are real reports and real sightings, as we call them, procedure sightings pulled out from those. In one Mandiant report, we had 43 sightings coming out, and you just get a sense of the scale from some of the other ones as well. So what this is already starting to reveal is there is a lot of data to be handled and managed here. What we also did with this, and this is really not using actual AI, but just some statistical similarity analysis, is we kind of bundled up procedures, sightings that we pulled from the reports to look at essentially ones that were very similar in terms of what they were trying to achieve, how they were being carried out, and where they might have existed. And those we called procedure clusters. So in essence, we really have two objects to kind of help us tackle this challenge. But the clusters are so essential in being able to start to manage the large volume of information coming out from these reports. Intentionally put a lot on this slide just so you can get a sense of kind of all the things that are happening, even when we look at a single report or maybe even a single procedure citing, a procedure instance from those reports. A huge benefit of what we've done and how we've modeled these objects in our knowledge base is having this ability to link procedures with all the other important data elements in the knowledge base that you as a cyber defender would care about. So in my realm, in the CTI space, certainly we want to know which groups and malware and tools are carrying out certain procedures or being used to carry them out. When we do talk about the value of MITRE ATT&CK tactics and techniques, we definitely want to know which of those apply to these procedures as well. And so that's a relationship too. When we shift more into the defensive side of the equation, we want to know, because we can know, what log sources or data components are being used to carry out these procedures that you might be able to also leverage to give you visibility into their existence if they were to appear in your network. And then certainly when we talk about what we call defensive capabilities, these can be things like detection rules or analytic ideas, threat hunts that you might execute, or even on the offensive security side of things, simulation or atomic unit tests. All of those defensive capabilities can and are able to be linked directly to procedures. And this is what's really helping us overcome that traditional challenge, because now we can say with extreme utmost confidence that the defenses that we have are related to or give us coverage against specific adversary activity as it is being carried out in the actual real world. One more snapshot of the overall kind of volumes and some metrics of our procedures library. The graphic here gives you just a sense of scale when we talk about there's a relatively small number of tactics, slightly larger number of techniques, but again, giving you this immense sense of scale of the procedures, the sightings and clusters that we pulled out just from an initial batch of CTI processing. We are absolutely going to continue maintaining and adding to this knowledge base. All of this data was pulled out from, I'll say, just 1,500 blogs, so CTI articles and written content. So this is just a starting point, but it gave us this extremely deep well that we can now continue to add to. Some metrics, if you're really into a sense of what we actually did, average 13 sightings per reference or blog. So I think that's a pretty healthy number. I mentioned before about how it's important to be able to link multiple techniques or behaviors to a given sighting. On average, we are seeing that play out in the real world. So we're seeing an average of 2 as opposed to just 1, which is all you'd be able to get from the MITRE ATT&CK knowledge base, 9 sightings per cluster, and then all this being linked to 7,000 unique related threats. And these are actually going to be named threats, so groups, campaigns, and software, things that you would read about in news reporting or that vendors would be including in their blogs. I'm pretty short on time, so I'll probably finish up with just 1 or 2 kind of real examples and applications here. As you look at what I'm about to show on the screen, kind of keep in mind, this is a great graphic from the Center for Threat-Informed Defense. This is their Measure, Maximize, and Mature Threat-Informed Defense project, but they put everything that they look at into kind of this triad of cyber threat intelligence, adversary testing and evaluation, and defensive measures. So that triangle is going to carry over into what I'm about to show. But here is now a real look at a real blog that some or maybe many of you probably read last fall. This is Storm 0501 from the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center. And this was a ransomware group that was relatively sophisticated in being able to pivot from on-premises to cloud environments, which is not something we see every day with every ransomware group. But the graphic on the screen here is giving you a sense of the data that we pulled out just from this single report. I'll highlight that this was a long and very detailed, in a good way, report, but this would take you roughly 40 minutes just to kind of read through, let alone start to action some of the findings from this report. So not a criticism, please don't get me wrong, but for a human to go through this and try to make sense of it, that's a lot of time and effort involved in that. And so we're seeing a snapshot of all the sightings and clusters, groups, and softwares that we pulled out from this. I do want to leave you just with one concrete example of how this can be useful. Something that was super cool is when we did this processing, we also were able to identify from within the report, as many reports do, a call out to specific Microsoft defensive capabilities, in this case, a Sentinel rule that was referenced in the report that would be relevant to defending against this group and its attacks. And so we saw that called out in the report. When we took a look inside our knowledge base in what we call our product registry, a list of capabilities that end users are actually using in their environment, we can see directly this exact same Sentinel rule already existing in the product registry. So if it's not obvious, what this is allowing you to do is track down to that granular procedure level, know what a given actor actually did in the real world, and then have immediate knowledge and confidence that you might have defenses in your stack already that could relate to and potentially defend against this activity. And possibly you already had that turned on. Very last thing I would call out is just super exciting, this triad like perfectly coming into play already in the knowledge base from the great Atomic Red team, Red Canary's open source testing library. They also had an existing unit test that directly related to this activity that was observed. I know it's really small on the screen, but this was using a PowerShell script to tamper with certain security products by setting certain registry keys. And so we were able to simulate that exact same behavior as well, and just completely the triad because we had defenses, tests, and real-world evidence from a recent timely CTI report. So I'll close off there. I know I'm right at time, but thanks for coming in the attention, and I'll be around to answer any questions that folks might have. Thanks.